Well, hello, thank you for joining me today again on the Church History Trail. And where we find ourselves today is actually in the village of KILLINCHY, which is in County Down, and it's near Strangford Lock. And of course you can see the lock there, just over the roof there of the house. And that's Strangford Lock. And where we are actually is we're at what's known as the living room, because it's named after John Livingstone, and it says welcome to the Livingstone Centre at KILLINCHY Parish Church. And of course John was a minister here of the Presbyterian Church, and he also ministered at the parish church. It says in the summer of 1630, he says, I accepted a call to the parish of KILLINCHY. Reverend John Livingstone, 1603 to 1672, and it's Stories living room, and I've been inside. It's absolutely fantastic, so it is. And so we're going to go and have a wee look, and I'll show you inside. Again, you get a good view up here, and I think that's Scrabo Tower there away in the distance. It is. You get a good view here from Strangford Lock. And there's different billboards here. Now I'm not going to read them all out to you. You can pause the video if you want and you can have a read. It says, hymn writer, son of KILLINCHY, here is love fast as the ocean. Robert Lowry's tune, Ulster, for a metrical version of Psalm 132. So it says, the rousing melody for this hymn, made famous during the Welsh revival of the early 1900s, was just one of many written by Robert Lowry, 1826 to 1899. His father, Crozier, emigrated in 1817 from the KILLINCHY area across the vast Atlantic Ocean to Pennsylvania. He may have been related to John Lowry, who was killed at the Battle of Saintfield in 1798, and I've been at John Lowry's grave. If you check out the Battle of Saintfield, you will see John's grave, because I cover that in that video. So that's a gentleman there. That's actually Robert Lowry. So it is. And yes, it was Robert Lowry who was the hymn writer. So that's a gentleman there. So there you go, and then you can see there, welcome to the living room, and there's the man himself. And that's John Livingstone portrait by Franz Hals, 1655. So there you go. And that's courtesy of Susan and Henry Livingstone, so they must be related. It says there, Reverend John Livingstone, 1603 to 1672. So there you go. So we're going to have a wee look. So this is the wee room here, which is the living room. As you can see, and there's a big map there, and that map is a section of County Down in 1810. And there's billboards here. Again, I'm not going to read everything to you. If you want, you can pause the video. But it's 1798 Rebellion. Down is up. And you can pause there if you so wish. And there's a few graves, a couple of graves here, which I'm going to see if I can find. One's Dr. James Cord, and the other one is James McCann. And then I'll have to pay a wee visit to that graveyard as well, because there's an old ruined church there as well. Again, that's the John Lowry and the James McEwen gravestones. I cover those in the Battle of Saintfield. So if you check my playlist for the United Irishmen playlist, you will see those two graves at the Battle of Saintfield one. So there's KILLINCHY in the 1798 Rebellion. So I'll read this out to you. It says, there are many local traditions about the support that the people of KILLINCHY give to the United Irishmen and their role in the 1798 Rebellion. Stories have been handed down through the generations about meetings held by the United Irishmen at the windmill in KILLINCHY and at other places, or blacksmiths at work making pikes and of weapons hidden in thatched roofs. And then it says there, June 9th, the Battle of Saintfield. Men from Killinchy fought with the United Irishmen in the Battle of Saintfield on the 9th of June 1798. Headstones to two of them can be found in the lower end of the graveyard of First Saintfield Presbyterian Church, where a memorial garden has been created. And as I say, I've done a wee video on that. They were James McEwen of Ballymacreely and John Laurie of Ballymoran. The date on Laurie's headstone is 19th of June, though it looks like someone has tried to correct this error. And then it's a 1798 burials at Killinchy and Tullynakill. I'll have to get to that Tullynakill one. I'll have to find out what that is. Killinchy churchyard contains the graves to a number of men who were hanged in the aftermath of the rebellion. One memorial records the death on the 23rd of June 1798 of Dr. James Cord it says there, at the age of 31, who was hanged in Downpatrick. According to eyewitnesses, he had led the men of Killinchy into battle at Saintfield riding on a white horse. So I wonder is that the same legend of King William riding on a white horse at the Battle of the Point. Then it says another headstone was erected in memory of James McCann, another leader of the Killinchy men, who was also executed in Downpatrick. And then it says a headstone in Tullynakill graveyard commemorates 21-year-old John McWilliam, who died at the Battle of Ballynahinch. And that's Dr. James Cord gravestone, Killinchy, and James McCann gravestone, Killinchy, which is a flat stone. So I hope to find those today if I can. And then it's John McWilliam gravestone, Tullynakill. So I'll have to get to that one as well at some stage. And this is the revival, 1859 revival. Spiritual awakenings. One of the most dramatic events in Irish religious history was the 1859 revival. Spiritual awakening which spread through Ulster at a remarkable pace. The events of 1859 were not the first religious revival in the history of Ulster, and neither was revival only experienced in Ireland. Reverend John Livingstone had himself been involved in revivals in Scotland and Ulster in the early 1600s. And so there's 1630, the Kirk of Shotts revival, and I actually have a friend who's over at Shotts Congregational Church. He's a minister over there. He went over from here to minister there. So you can read that, pause the video and read that if you want. 1620s, 1630s, the 6 Mile Water revival. And there's the Kirk of Shotts and also the 6 Mile Water at Antrim Castle. And there's when God would plant our godly vine within this land of yore, a band of exiled ministers, brave Menby, Hiller, Bore, Dunbar and Stewart and Robert Blair, in secret lore who shone, James Hamilton of noble blood and honoured Livingstone. Very good. Part of a poem from 1859 by the Reverend Matthew Kerr of Dromore, Dromore where I live, which looked back to the revivals of the 1600s and John Livingstone. And there you can see John Livingstone preaching at Kirk of Shotts, 1630. That's excellent, isn't it? So there's the 1859 revival in Killinchy. The revival swept through Killinchy in the summer of 1859. The Church of Ireland rector Henry Ward was in full sympathy with the revival, and he and the Presbyterian minister David Anderson worked together to promote this spiritual awakening. Describing the events of that year, Ward wrote that no distinction being made and the hearts of all knit together in one holy bond of Christian fellowship. And so you can read the rest of that, you can pause the video. The Honourable and Reverend Henry Ward, the impact of the revival, and there's the Honourable and Reverend Henry Ward himself. So there's other billboards here. Again, you can pause the video and read them. This is John Livingstone and his wife. But before we look at this one here, I want to show you this one, because this is the Ulster Covenant and its Women's Declaration and the Great War. And I'm just going to read a wee bit of this to you. In the years 1910 to 1914, political debate in Ireland focused on the proposal to establish a parliament in Dublin. Unionists in Ulster looked to Scotland for inspiration in preparing a document that would express their strong opposition to Home Rule. The result was Ulster's Solemn League and Covenant of 1912. And there's an influential man there as well. It's Reverend Dr. Joseph Grundy Burton. And so you can pause the video here if you want. And you can read those. There's Carson signing the covenant. There's the Ulster's Solemn League and Covenant. And so you can read those if you want. I'll read this bit to you, which is the Covenant in KILLINCHY, because it concerns KILLINCHY. The Covenant signings were organised mainly by parliamentary constituency and then by district. And all 234 men signed the Covenant and 309 women signed the declaration in the district of KILLINCHY in the constituency of East Down. Two of the designated venues for signing the Covenant were the vestry of KILLINCHY Parish Church, there you are, and the rectory. Total of 99 men and 85 women signed at these locations. And I'm going to give you a review here of the lock, as you can see. Belfast lock, or sorry, Strangford lock. We're a wee bit from Belfast. And that's a war hero, KILLINCHY boyhood of a war hero, World War II. So I'll just read the black part out to you. Reverend Dr. Joseph Grundy Burton and his wife Anne had no children, but for a time they cared for their nephew John Dill. He went on to become Field Marshal Sir John Dill, the Chief of the Imperial General Staff during World War II. He played a significant role in the formation of special relationship between UK and USA, speaking to the Pennsylvania Scotch-Irish Society in 1944. Dill said, and then you can pause that and read that if you so wish. There's Army chaplains. The Reverend, I'll read this out to you because it concerns Livingstone. Army chaplains. In 1640, Reverend John Livingstone was chaplain to the Earl of Cassilis, regiment, a Covenanter regiment of foot raised for the Bishop's Wars, and was present at the Battle of Newburn. During the Irish Rebellion, he ministered to the Scotch Army in Ulster under the command of General Munro. Other rectors too have provided for the spiritual needs of the army at various times in our history. And so there's Very Reverend Dr. Richard Simmons, and that's Reverend Thomas Cecil Burrows, that is. And then that's Reverend Dr. Stanley Thomas Robert Gimble. And I recognise his face, I've maybe seen him on TV maybe. So there's Royal Army Chaplains Department crest. So there you go. And then this is Livingstone and his wife. So that's the Reverend John Livingstone. Again, if you want to read any of that, you can pause the video. That's Janet and John Livingstone, 15 children, my goodness. How did he get time to preach? 15 children. If there had been Formulans in that day, he'd have been a millionaire for all the kids. And that's Janet Fleming, who's his wife, was John's wife. And again, you can pause the video and read there. And then KILLINCHY in New Zealand, big connection with KILLINCHY in New Zealand. Again, you can pause the video there, and if you want to read, I'll just read the black part to you. It says, immigration, KILLINCHY in New Zealand. Over the centuries, many people from KILLINCHY have emigrated to another part of the world in search of a new life and new opportunities. Many individuals and families moved to Britain, the United States, Canada and Australia. KILLINCHY has a special relationship with New Zealand. And so that's the Ward family and whatnot. So again, you can pause the video. And then I hope to get a wee visit there. That's an Drum monastic site. So I hope to get a wee visit there. I don't know if I'll get there today. That's the graveyard. Isn't it fantastic? So I hope to be able to find those two United Irishmen graves, hopefully. At least I have a picture. When you have a picture, it's a lot easier than looking from scratch, because when you're looking from scratch, you just have to look at every grave till you find it. But with a picture, it makes it easier. That's Kilmood and Tullykill. Since 1923, the parishes of KILLINCHY, Kilmood and Tullykill have been united under the one rector. And so I hope to check out both those. Well, I hope to check out that one definitely, because that looks like it's ancient. So that's definitely, I want to check that one out. That's rectors of KILLINCHY. And you can see all the rectors there. Right the whole way down. Again, you can pause the video and and that's Killinchy Parish Churchyard. The churchyard beside Killinchy Parish Church has been in use since medieval times. The oldest surviving memorials date from the late 1600s. The earliest date on a gravestone is 1684, the year in which Robert Bruce died. He was a son of Reverend Michael Bruce, who had been ordained minister of Killinchy in 1657 on the recommendation of Reverend John Livingstone. And of course there was a whole succession of the Bruce ministers. There's about 7 of them, and I've done a wee video of them because Michael Bruce, the later Michael Bruce, not the original one from the 17th century, but the later one, he's actually buried in the Priory at the old Priory at Hollywood, and they actually have an ancestral connection to the Bruce, Robert the Bruce of Scotland. So fantastic. And there's communal burial ground, and you can read that. And then I'm going to read this out to you. I found this interesting. This is Churchyard Rat. In 1639, James Forsyth, a Scotsman, became rector of Killinchy. This was at a time of considerable unrest in Ireland due to the government's religious policies. Forsyth was not popular with his parishioners, many of whom continued to look to Reverend John Livingstone for spiritual guidance. In the spring of 1641, so that's during the year of Irish Rebellion, while reading the burial service during a funeral, Forsyth was pushed from the graveside by women with their laps full of stones and men armed with swords. So thankfully that doesn't happen at gravesides today, but it did then. So I thought that was interesting. So this is the last one, and then we're going to wrap this wee video up. And I'm also going to show you a picture here of the Eagle's Wings, the ship. That's Killinchy Parish Church. The site of Killinchy Parish Church has been a place of Christian worship for centuries, possibly for more than 1,000 years. In the early 1600s, the medieval parish church was in ruins, but it was repaired or rebuilt around the time that Reverend John Livingstone moved here. Because of its location on the brow of a hill, this church was known as the Visible Church. And there's the present church. And there's Henry and Susan Livingstone of Livingstone Manor, USA. There you are. That's the Gamble family with Susan and Henry Livingstone. 29th of September 2018, in front of the Reverend John Livingstone Memorial Pipe Organ. So obviously they're descendants then. And again, you can pause the video if you want to read those. And there's Strangford Lock. So that's the church there, as you can see, the graveyard, and then that's Strangford Lock behind it, which I showed you earlier. And I'm going to show you the graveyard, and then we're going to finish with one more thing. So there's the graveyard again. So I'm looking forward to having a wee look around the graveyard and hopefully find those 2 graves. So this is Eagle's Wings, and it's actually Eagle Wing, but it's called here Eagle's Wings, from Ulster, 1636 to America. And how I carried you upon eagle's wings, that's what it was named after in Exodus 19 verse 4. And I've brought you unto me. And you can pause the video and read that if you so wish. But Reverend John Livingstone was one of the ministers on that ship, left from Groomsport, and it had to turn back. The wind was very boisterous, and so it was really bad, the sailing, and they took this as a sign that God was displeased with them and that he wanted them to turn back. And so they did turn back, and they came back then to Ireland. And of course, as I say, that sailed from Groomsport, and I've done a wee video on that, the Eagle Wing ship sailing from Groomsport, so you can check that out. So thank you, and I hope you've enjoyed this wee tour. This is amazing. It's a small wee place, but it packs a lot of history, there's no doubt about it. So thanks for watching, and God bless.